Chapter 7. Christianity is called the religion of pity. Pity stands opposed to the tonic emotions which heighten our vitality. It has a depressing effect. We are deprived of strength when we feel pity. That loss of strength which suffering as such inflicts on life is still further increased and multiplied by pity. Pity makes suffering contagious. Under certain circumstances, it may engender a total loss of life and vitality out of all proportion to the magnitude of the cause, as in the case of the death of the Nazarene. That is the first consideration, but there is a more important one. Suppose we measure pity by the value of the reactions it usually produces, then its perilous nature appears in an even brighter light. Quite in general, pity crosses the law of development, which is the law of selection. It preserves what is ripe for destruction. It defends those who have been disinherited and condemned by life, and by the abundance of the failures of all kinds which it keeps alive, it gives life itself a gloomy and questionable aspect. Some have dared to call pity a virtue. In every noble ethic, it is considered a weakness. And as if this were not enough, it has been made the virtue, the basis and source of all virtues. To be sure, and one should always keep this in mind, this was done by a philosophy that was nihilistic and had inscribed the negation of life upon its shield. Schopenhauer was consistent enough. Pity negates life and renders it more deserving of negation. Pity is the practice of nihilism. To repeat, this depressive and contagious instinct crosses those instincts which aim at the preservation of life and at the enhancement of its value. It multiplies misery and conserves all that is miserable, and is thus a prime instrument of the advancement of decadence. Pity persuades men to nothingness. Of course, one does not say nothingness, but beyond, or God, or true life, or nirvana, salvation, blessedness. This innocent rhetoric from the realm of the religious moral idiosyncrasy appears much less innocent as soon as we realize which tendency it is that here shrouds itself in sublime words. Hostility against life. Schopenhauer was hostile to life, therefore pity became a virtue for him. Aristotle, as is well known, considered pity a pathological and dangerous condition which one would be well advised to attack now and then with a purge. He understood tragedy as a purge. From the standpoint of the instinct of life, a remedy certainly seems necessary for such a pathological and dangerous accumulation of pity as is represented by the case of Schopenhauer, and unfortunately by our entire literary and artistic decadence from St. Petersburg to Paris, from Tolstoy to Wagner, to puncture it and make it burst. In our whole unhealthy modernity, there is nothing more unhealthy than Christian pity. To be physicians here, to be inexorable here, to wield the scalpel here, that is our part. That is our love of man. That is how we are philosophers, we Hyperboreans. Chapter 8. It is necessary to say whom we consider our antithesis. It is the theologians, and whatever has theologians' blood in its veins, and that includes our whole philosophy. Whoever has seen this catastrophe at close range, or better yet, been subjected to it and almost perished of it, will no longer consider it a joking matter. The free thinking of our honorable natural scientists and physiologists is, to my mind, a joke. They lack passion in these matters. They do not suffer them as their passion and martyrdom. This poisoning is much more extensive than is generally supposed. I have found the theologian's instinctive arrogance wherever anyone today considers himself an idealist, where a right is assumed on the basis of some higher origin to look at reality from a superior and foreign vantage point. The idealist, exactly like the priest, holds all the great concepts in his hand, and not only in his hand. He plays them out with a benevolent contempt for the understanding, the senses, honors, good living, and science. He considers all that beneath him as so many harmful and seductive forces over which the spirit hovers in a state of pure for-itselfness, as if humility, chastity, poverty, or in one word, holiness, had not harmed life immeasurably more than any horrors or vices. The pure spirit is the pure lie. As long as the priest is considered a higher type of man, the professional negator, slanderer, and poisoner of life, there is no answer to the question, what is truth? For truth has been stood on its head when the conscious advocate of nothingness and negation is accepted as the representative of truth. Chapter 9. Against this theologian's instinct, I wage war. I have found its traces everywhere. Whoever has theologian's blood in his veins sees all things in a distorted and dishonest perspective to begin with. The pathos which develops out of this condition calls itself faith. Closing one's eyes to oneself once and for all, lest one suffer the sight of incurable falsehood. This faulty perspective on all things is elevated into a morality, a virtue, a holiness. The good conscience is tied to faulty vision, and no other perspective is conceded any further value once one's own has been made sacrosanct with the names of God, redemption, and eternity. I have dug up the theologian's instinct everywhere. It is the most widespread, really subterranean form of falsehood found on earth. Whatever a theologian feels to be true must be false. This is almost a criterion of truth. His most basic instinct of self-preservation forbids him to respect reality at any point, or even to let it get a word in. Wherever the theologian's instinct extends, value judgments have been stood on their heads, and the concepts of true and false are of necessity reversed. Whatever is most harmful to life is called true. Whatever elevates it, enhances, affirms, justifies it, and makes it triumphant is called false. When theologians reach out for power through the conscience of princes or of peoples, we need never doubt what really happens at bottom. The will to the end, the nihilistic will, wants power.